Now, of all the things the expanded universe brought into Star Wars, one of the big ones that never quite sat right with me was the idea of gray Jedi, or the belief by some that the proper way for a Jedi to use the Force is to draw from the light and the dark in order to achieve balance. I mean, it's cool in concept, it even seemingly sounds correct at face value, and I've never let it ruin my enjoyment of the expanded universe too much. But simply put, that's not how the Force works. That's not how balance in Star Wars works, according to George Lucas. And as you'll hopefully see when I'm done here, saying something like Ahsoka Tano is a gray Jedi, as some do, is perhaps the most insulting thing you could call her. And to begin to explain why, let's go to a recent interview with Dave Filoni, where he had this to say. Ultimately, the Force is an ability that can be used selflessly or selfishly, and how one chooses to wield it determines whether you stand on the dark side or light. The dark side of the Force is manifested in our greed, desire for power, and fears. And the light side of the Force is propagated by selfless action, by living in balance, by overcoming our fears. The Force naturally exists in balance. That balance is thrown out when someone chooses to give in to their fears and then spirals out of control, making selfish choices after selfish choice. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. Okay, so there are a few very, very key or important things to take away from what Filoni says here. The first is that how one chooses to wield the Force determines where they stand with it, and the only two ways to use it are selflessly or selfishly. You're basically either using it to serve and help others, which propagates the light or spreads goodness, or you use it to get or accomplish things for yourself, which manifests the dark side or brings about evil. So already here, the idea that you can be a Jedi and use the dark side, or need to use the dark side, to help others isn't making a whole lot of sense, because your intent is determining how you're using the Force and what you're bringing about because of it. Your focus determines your reality, as Qui-Gon Jinn once said. And no, he's not a gray Jedi either, he's anything but. He was probably one of the few true Jedi left during the prequel era, one that still followed the will of the Force over the will of the Senate. And before going on, let me make it clear that I don't think it's impossible for someone who is Force sensitive and is generally a well-meaning person to use both sides of the Force from time to time without ever falling to the dark side. And just because a Jedi gets angry once and uses it to Force choke someone, for example, or maybe to easily overpower their father in a lightsaber duel, doesn't mean it's game over and they will fall, not if they recognize what's happening and bring themselves back from the cusp. That said though, the more you do use the dark side, intentionally or not, and the more you get the results you want from using it, the more likely you'll be to fall at some point. The dark side, after all, is very tempting. It's like a trap. Filoni basically says that here when he reiterates what Yoda once said about how fear leads to anger, anger to hate, and then to suffering. And not to get too much into it here, but the dark side is like an addiction. Once you start using it and you find out how easy it is to get what you want by using it, you tend to want to use it again and again and again because, yeah, it's easy to get what you want with it. But at the same time, it takes control over you. You're acting in service of it, and you never even realize things have flipped. The best way to perhaps understand this is to look at what happens to someone who has a serious drug problem. How a once good person can lose any and all morals and do whatever they must to get that next fix. And so anyone who, for some reason, feels like they should use the dark and light sides of the Force is not going to find this an easy task. They're not going to find it easy to, quote-unquote, balance the two, because for one, it's always easier to just use the dark side for a fast and easy solution, if you will. I mean, why do something the hard way when you're already willing to do it the easy way, and when you'll get the same result? Because that's the other thing. There's no real benefit to using the dark side over the light. It's not more powerful. It's oftentimes just a different, quicker, and easier path to the same results. And it's always easier to get mad and act impulsively than it is to stay calm and think and then to act rationally. And sure, there's those unnatural abilities that the dark side offers, but if you're trying to be a good person and do right, to be Jedi-like, you certainly don't have any interest in all that. There's also the fact that, yes, the dark side may offer different, and let's be honest, cool abilities like Force Lightning, for example, which is one of the reasons why I think some really love the idea of gray Jedi. They like the idea of Jedi being or doing things that are a bit more, shall we say, edgy, and maybe a little more cool and less monk-like. But again, the dark side does not offer more power or any actual benefit that couldn't be achieved by strictly adhering to the light. And though you might say it'd be handy for a Jedi to use lightning from time to time, the problem is the only thing that can be accomplished with using lightning is to destroy and harm others, and for a Jedi, the Force is only meant to be used for knowledge and defense. Basically, the dark side of the Force is no more powerful than the light and offers the Jedi nothing that they would actually ever want to use. It's really just a different, easier means of using the Force, and one that ultimately causes imbalance. Because if we go back to what Filoni said here, and this is the second big key, the light side of the Force is propagated by those living in balance, meaning the light side is balance, and those who use the dark side cause imbalance because it is the dark side. And so why would a Jedi who seeks or should seek above all else to keep the Force in balance, to keep it in this natural state of being as Filoni said it was, why would they use the dark side and risk knocking it out of balance, especially when, yet again, the dark side offers no more power than the light side does? Not that a Jedi is even seeking power per se. And I know I've said this like 100 times before in videos, but what you have to keep in mind is that balance in Star Wars is not equal parts dark and light. Balance in Star Wars is simply harmony. It's basically a system working as intended. Think of it like a human body. Are we balanced or working as intended when we have equal parts sickness and health within us? When we have just the right amount of healthy cells compared to cancer cells? And Lucas has even described the dark side like a cancer. Of course we're not. We're healthy when we're free of any and all cancer and sickness, and our immune systems are ever on guard to keep things that way, or to fight when they're not, which is exactly what the Jedi do for the galaxy. They stand on guard to keep things balanced, and fight when they're not. And to take it a step further and explain what happened with the Jedi of the prequel era, why they fell or failed, well, there is the second part of what Filoni said, which you can pause and read for yourself if you'd like. But basically it amounts to him saying how sometimes we can be well-meaning but still make the wrong choices. We can think we're good people, that we're doing good, but really we're not. Which again is something Lucas has said before as well. And so the Jedi of the prequel era were basically doing this very thing. They were well-meaning and thought they were doing good by working with the Republic, but they were more like an overactive immune system at that point, more so than anything else. They were out there trying to do way too much, and so they missed the real threat right under their nose, which was, of course, Palpatine. So basically here, to reiterate, the light side is balance. It's being selfless. It's a symbiotic system of many different beings all living together and working as intended, while the dark side is imbalance. It's selfishness. It's individuals only looking out for themselves and being parasitic, and a parasite, of course, has a really bad habit of eventually killing their host. And so then thinking balance is somewhere between these two, that it's gray, is frankly kind of missing the entire point of Star Wars. Because it's always been about making the right choice, even though it's difficult. It's always been about being selfless over making the wrong choice, even though it's easy, and being selfish. Which brings us right back to Ahsoka and why she is not a gray Jedi or anything close to it. Which is because she is always making the right choices. She is always being selfless and propagating the light and keeping the balance. Always. There's a reason why Filoni gave her white lightsabers, I think, which was to show or represent that even though she doesn't call herself a Jedi anymore, she is still very much in tune with the light side of the Force, and only the light side of the Force. And to imply she would find any value in using the dark side after everything she has gone through with Anakin and so on, is completely missing what this character is all about. And though I never would have guessed it some 12 years ago now, when I saw her for the very first time in the Clone Wars movie, she has easily become one of the best and most fascinating characters in the whole franchise, and though outside of her voice, she wasn't in any of the saga films, she has still become such an integral part of that story. And I really do think, by the end, she will be a Jedi again. I think she will encounter Luke and help him begin his new order. It only makes sense, and it'd be the perfect way for her character to come full circle. That it basically ends by helping the son of her former master restore the Jedi Order, after that former master was the one who destroyed it. She can teach Luke all the good things Anakin once taught her, though don't remind me about how it all has to end thanks to the sequels. And as I've said elsewhere, the truly interesting part about putting Luke and Ahsoka together in a story is the debate that could come about over attachments, because Ahsoka knows Anakin fell because of attachments, and Luke knows he was saved because of them. And so it'd be fascinating to see how these two form a philosophy, or a way for a Jedi Order going forward, because as I've also said before, it really could have and should have been one of the things the sequels explored. Okay, in closing here, if you're someone who likes the Ahsoka Grey Jedi idea, that she will be the one to balance the light and the dark, or whatever it is you think she'll do, even though at the end of Rebels we've seen she'll become Ahsoka the White, and Filoni has even suggested that might happen after when we see her in The Mandalorian. Anyway, if that's what you want her to become, hopefully I've at least given you something to think about here, and maybe something to talk about in the comments below. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say in this video, and how you feel about Grey Jedi in general, and what you think about Ahsoka being or becoming one. Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.